Hi, this is Dan Abbott. I am making this video for my AEDD-160 class at Southern Maine Community College. That's the CAD applications class, a second level CAD class. And I'm doing it for two reasons. One, just to say hello and introduce myself. The other, to give you a sense of what our classes will be like, since we'll be using a Zoom application to have Zoom meetings, and our classes will meet once a week in that Zoom meeting, be required. And I'll have one other time during the week that I schedule where I'll have a Zoom meeting open and I'll be there the entire time, and you can come and work on lab that point. You can ask questions, you can meet with other students, whatever it is you want to do. So you'll be seeing this format a lot. So this is right now a Zoom meeting. I'm the only participant. Normally you could see other participants as well, and I hope when you do join the meeting that you'll do it with your video turned on so I can see your face, because I'd love to see you. And I know some of you don't have cameras. I know some of you aren't crazy about being on video. So, you know, whatever you're most comfortable with. But we'll be going back and forth. I'll be asking you questions. I'll be specifically asking you questions by name. I'm going to be asking you for feedback a lot to make sure people understand what I'm doing. But for right now, what I'm going to do is give you a demonstration. I'm going to do a lesson essentially on something from the class and give you a little sense of what the class is going to be like. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And by the way, I have a screen over here. I have a screen over here. I have a document camera over here. So while I'm working, you're going to see me looking on this side, looking on that side, looking over here, and then looking directly at you. I'll be back and forth. So we're going to start the screen share. Looks like this. So here's a book we're going to use. I wrote that book, 2007. I had a lot of help from Paul Richardson, who was my technical editor. Literally hired him to do a technical edit on the book. Meredith Como contributed substantially to the chapter on 3D. Scott Danis helped me a little bit with the Autolist chapters. There are a lot of chapters in this book, and we use it for this class, for the CAD 3D class, and also for CAD management. Most specifically, the CAD management chapters are something that you're probably going to want to wait until we get to CAD management to do. If I look down through here at the chapters that are involved, we're going to be dealing with a chapter called AutoCAD Productivity, which is best practices in AutoCAD. And by the way, I started using AutoCAD in 1989. Before that, I used a different CAD program for 4 or 5 years. So my CAD experience goes back a long way. I also worked for Autodesk as a consultant, as a contractor, and as a speaker at their annual very large CAD conference. 6,000 people would attend that conference every year, and I was for 14 years one of their speakers. So I've had a lot of opportunity, and I've also done a lot of training for local companies and from companies actually all over the country. I've had a lot of opportunities to get feedback from people. And what I did when I wrote this book was wrote what I consider a best practices book. It's not really a book on how to learn to use AutoCAD. You really can't get anything out of this book unless you already know how to use AutoCAD. This book is how to use AutoCAD correctly, and it's not just AutoCAD. It really applies to any CAD system. There are an awful lot of people who still have this book on their shelves and pull it down frequently for help. And it's still selling on Amazon. And by the way, you can get this book fairly inexpensively. If you go online and find a used copy, you could probably get one for $4 or $5. So this is not going to cost you a lot of money. I will say when I actually did the book, the publisher asked what I wanted it to cost. And I said, I don't want it to cost more than $40 because I want my students to be able to afford it. At the time, we were pretty much hoping that we could use the book in 3 classes. So right now, you've got a pretty good deal considering how much textbooks cost. So the first chapter, AutoCAD Productivity, is kind of a best practices, how to use AutoCAD efficiently. We're also going to be dealing with Chapter 2. Chapter 2 has a lot to do with managing files and understanding the file types in AutoCAD. And among those files are files like template files we'll be spending a lot of time with. Chapter 4, Applying Graphic Standards, that really also is a chapter on creating templates. And a template file is simply a file in AutoCAD or any CAD program. Virtually every CAD program has templates as a possibility, where the idea is you put as much as you can into a template file so that you have very little to do to set up a drawing for no matter what application you're going to be using it for. You're going to be creating multiple template files in different disciplines, both US imperial units and metric units. And I'll give you a little introduction to what that means today. And then the last chapter we're going to be dealing with is chapter 6, which is a chapter on plotting. plotting is one of those things that people often mess up with CAD programs, and we want to make sure that when you leave this program that you are confident and capable and can plot correctly no matter what. So that's the book you're going to use. Now I'm going to get rid of that. The idea of a template is to have certain things that are standardized, and one of those things is layer names. Now what I'm showing you here is the American Institute of Architects guidelines for layer names. You'll notice it is extensive, and in fact it is unlikely that you'll ever see an AutoCAD file that includes all of these layer names. It isn't even necessarily comprehensive because there are layer names you might use for other things. I'm going to use this to come up with some layer names for a drawing we're about to do. The drawing we're about to do, and what I'm going to do is go through one of the assignments from the class, go through and show you how I would set up beforehand, because I don't want you doing these drawings until you have set up a drawing with all the appropriate layers, blocks in some cases, settings for dimension styles, and then you're going to use that as a basis for creating a template file, which means that's something you can use anytime you do another drawing that is architectural. So if we take a look at this, we're looking at a drawing that is a foundation, fairly simple foundation. The hidden lines represent a footing, which is below ground. The dark lines represent the foundation walls, which extend above ground at least 8 inches. And so we've got foundation walls and we've got a foundation footing. If we look at the AIA standards over here, and we say, well, what do they use for a layer name for foundation? You'll notice that it comes under something called structural. And the foundation layer guidelines would start with the letter S. And in these layer name conventions, the first character, the first field is always a single character. An A for architectural, E for electrical, M for mechanical, P for plumbing, C for civil, in this case, S for structural. Structural normally means kinds of beams and other kinds of structures, skeletal structure that holds a building up. Foundations are included in that and considered part of that process. So I'm going to need a layer called S-FNDN. Now, all of these fields have certain specified number of characters. First one, 1 character. After that, 4 characters. So I'm going to add one that doesn't even appear here. And that's a layer that we can put the footing on. So I'm just going to move this out of my way over here. This is the drawing I'm going to deal with. This is a blank AutoCAD drawing. In fact, let's start a brand new one just from scratch, just so there's no question about it. I'm going to start with ACAD.DWT because that's the imperial version. I'm not going to use any of the other templates that AutoCAD ships with because I don't like any of them. So now I'll go to the layer command. I'm going to make a new layer, and that new layer is going to have the letter S as its first character, S-FNDN for foundation, enter. Now I'll make another new layer, and this one will be S-FNDN -FOOT. That's going to be our footing layer. Foundation layer, I'm going to make it white. I'm not going to change the color. It'll be continuous, but the default line weight, I'm going to change that from the default to 0.4. Now I get on to S-FND footing. I'm going to change the color of that to differentiate it since it's on a different layer. I'm going to make that blue. I'm now going to go to continuous, and I'm going to say, well, I need a line type that's hidden because footings are shown with hidden line types. Line type for hidden isn't shown here, so I'm going to have to load it. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to type the letter H. I'm going to find the hidden to layer because the ones, and you have all these layers in AutoCAD. Line types in AutoCAD. And there's a standard line type. There's one where the segments are half the length, and there's one where the segments are twice the length. In my experience, the ones that are half the length are the hidden to, send to, etc. Those are the ones we want. So I'm going to load that line type and then assign it here. And I'm going to change from the default to 0.2 so that my line weight distinction is a 1 to 2 distinction. Now I'm going to make S-FND my current layer. So now I'm done with layers. In fact, I'm going to close right out of the layer thing. So I've got the layers that I need for this drawing. Now, from a template point of view, I would add many more of the AIA layers, and we have a handout that gives you recommendations for what that should be. Now, I'm also going to put some dimensions on here, so I'm going to go to the dimension style dialog box, and I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to set annotative current. I'm going to delete standard. Standard is a name you will hear over and over again this semester. Never name anything standard. I'll also say never name anything annotative, but I want these dimensions to be annotative, So I'm just going to rename that, and I'm going to call that my arc. In fact, I'm going to call that arc US. So that's my architectural style for the United States, where we use fractions and inches and feet. Now I'm going to go and make some changes. And the changes I'm going to make come right out of the book. There's a chapter in the book that goes through step by step and shows you all the changes that I'm recommending that you make. I'm going to quickly go through this right now. And I'm going to start baseline spacing. I'm going to set that to 0.5 for architectural. We'll talk about what that means later on. Extension lines, how far beyond do I want them to go? 1/16 of an inch. Offset from the origin, 1/16 of an inch. I'm done with this. I get on to symbols and arrows. Now I'm going to have a separate style for linear dimensions. So the tick mark that I use for architectural, I'm putting in that style. I'm going to leave this the way it is. I'll change my arrowhead size to 0.1. And I'll change the size of a center mark to 0.06, and I'll say draw some lines at the same time. Now, I have no center lines in this drawing, but I'm making a dimension style that I can use for any architectural drawing. Now I'll go to text, never use standard, never use annotative, so I need to go to the text window and I need to create a new style. And I'm going to create that new style by picking new, and I'll call it Arial. Now Arial is the name of the style. I'll make that my current style, and it's based on the Arial font. Now I can name this anything I want, but I want it based on the Arial font. By the way, I know this is a review for you, but again, I'm just trying to show you the process we're going to go through with some of these assignments. Because I'm going to use that Arial font only for dimensions, I don't need to make it annotative. But I am going to make another one called Arial, and I'm going to put a dash and call it Anno, because I will want that one to be annotative. Now I'm going to go back and set that current, close out of here, go back to my dimension dialog box, pick the wrong thing, a little arrow, and I'm going to pick Arial as a dimension style, 0.1 as my text height. Down here, offset, I'm going to change that to 0.04. And again, these are all things that are recommended. Now again, I'm not really making a linear style right now. I'm making a general style that'll apply to leaders and a few other things. As far as fit goes, the first thing I want to go on the outside if everything doesn't fit. If you can't put the entire dimension inside, what I want first is the arrows to go on the outside. So I'm going to pick that. And I'll leave that the way it is right now. Primary units are going to be architectural. The precision, this is going to seem odd to you, but I'm setting the precision to 1/256. Not because you would ever have a dimension like that, but because then you know for a fact if you've made an error in your design. So I'm not going to have to ever see that value, but if I have a little error over here and I think I've got 8 feet 6 inches and I'm off a little bit, it'll say 8 feet 5 inches and then give me some wild fraction, and that'll tell me that I need to go back and fix that. That's okay. We normally, and we'll leave everything the same for that. Now I'm going to make a few child variations. So I'll go to new once again. And this time I'm going to say start with, but for what? Not all dimensions, just linear dimensions. Now I'd make a few other child variations in general, but this time I just want linear. I'm going to continue. Now, the linear dimensions, what I want is all this stuff. Yes, that's fine, but I don't want arrowheads. Instead, I want tick marks called architectural tick marks. And I don't want them to be 0.1, I want them to be 0.05. And I want them to be kind of short, thick tick marks. Everything else here stays the same. Text height, the text though, I want the text to be above the line and I want the dimensions to be aligned. Now, that should be good enough. I have a dimension style and a child variation. Now, for an actual template file, I'm going to have to go back and add more to this. But for this drawing right now, I'm happy. I'm going to close this out. Now, I've got S-FND as my foundation layer. I'm going to change my limits now. And the limits, I'm going to make them large enough for when I'm drawing. So the lower left-hand corner is 0, 0. Oh, before I do that, though, I'm going to change my units for this drawing into architectural units so that I can type in feet and fractional inches and have it understand what I'm doing. Precision, you know, this really tells you the precision that you get information in. So I'd like that to be given to me in 1/256 as well. Precision for angles, I would normally change that if this were mechanical drawing, but we don't need to worry about that for this kind of drawing. So now the units are all set. I'm going to go back to my limits. I'm going to say 0, 0 in the lower left-hand corner, and we'll go with something like 50 feet, comma, 30 feet for the upper right-hand corner. Oh, I mistyped that. 50 feet, comma, 30 feet. Helps if you're paying attention to what you're doing, but I'm trying to look at the camera. So now I'm going to do a zoom all, and now I'm going to start drawing. I'm going to start drawing with a P line, and I like drawing with P lines, especially for this, because it's way more efficient. And if I don't draw with P lines, I always turn things into P lines when I'm done. I'm going to pick a point down here. I'm going to track to the right, and looking over at the drawing, I see that the distance I'm looking for right now is 17 feet. Make sure your tracking line is still there. I have 17 feet. I'm going to go straight up 3 feet. 8 inches, is that what I have? It is. Again, get your tracking line straight up before you press enter. You're going to go this way, 6 feet 6 inches. And then I'm going to come down, and I'm just going to track over here and pick up that line right there. Go this way, 10 feet 6 inches. Got my tracking line going straight up. Looks like straight up is 26 feet 4 inches. These are odd sizes, by the way, and there's a reason for that. We're going to come back later on, and we're going to fix that. Once again, I want to just track off of this. I could type in the value, but I'm just going to track, and I almost always do that just to make sure things line up. Coming down 18 feet, coming out 16 inches, coming straight down 5 feet. I'm going to go back in, track off that, bring it down here, and I'm going to type C for closed. Now I have a closed P line. Well, one of the reasons I did this is because I now want the inside wall, and I'm going to offset. I think the wall thickness here is 8 inches. I have to go back and look and see what it says. Wall is 8 inches. All right. So now I'm back over here. So I'm going to offset 8 inches. I'm going to pick this P line, and I'm going to get the entire thing offset. Now I do have to do a little editing here, but when you have a complex shape and you need to have a duplicate of that shape, offsetting a closed P line is going to give you a much cleaner inside duplicate than if you do individual lines and then have to go in and clean them up. Well, now we'll clean it up. So I'll do another P line, and we'll start that one right here. Actually, you know what? Let me do it a little differently. I'm going to have a P line. I'm going to come off of here because I do know the overall width is 3 feet 4 inches. I'm going to draw that over here 3 feet 4 inches. Then I'm going to bring this down here, bring it across to here, do a P line that goes from here to here. Now I'm going to join these together into one P line, and I'll offset 8 once again. And when I offset 8 once again, now I have that coming in like this. I'm going to do a trim. I'm going to make all these lines trim lines, and that allows me to go back in now and clean that up. Come back over here, P line that, you know what? I went the wrong way on this, didn't I? All right, well, I did go the wrong way on this, and we're going to fix that. I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix it. I'm going to put a P line in, and that, by the way, was not intentional. Kind of wish it had been, but it wasn't. So I'm starting right here and drawing down. If I start here and go down 3 feet 8 inches, okay, that's where I wanted this to go before. And this is going to go from here. All right, now we'll do the offset of 8 on this. It comes up like that. All these lines up here, we're going to get rid of those in just a minute. So what I want to do is trim that out and this out. And I'm going to get rid of that by doing that. And I'm going to explode these now so I can just dump that. So I will draw a line starting here, coming up 5 feet 8 inches. And that makes a lot more sense. Looks more like what I wanted. I'll come over here and bring that up like that. I'm going to come down, show you a little trick here in a minute. I'm going to come down here as well. Now I'm going to clean up those corners. The way I would clean up those corners is to put a fillet with my shift key held down. So now it's going to clean those corners up just like that. Now I've got this little piece here that I need to deal with. And I'll deal with that by offsetting 8. And I'll bring this down here, over here, over here. Now, I don't need that, and I don't need that actually. So once again, I'm going to do a fillet with the Shift key held down. And I'm going to do that. Another fillet with the Shift key held down. I'm going to do that. And now I've got what I want, but I really do want this to all be one piece. Before I do though, I'm going to add those little pilasters in, those little pieces that come out. So I'm now going to draw a line that goes right down through the center, and the location of that is 13 feet up from here. I'm going to hover over this, go up 13 feet, bring that across here like so. Now I'll do one of those little pilasters. I'm going to offset 8 inches. I'm going to bring that up here and down here. And now I'm going to draw a line starting here and coming out 8 inches. And I'm going to bring it up here like so. And now I'm going to clean this whole thing up a little bit. And to clean it up, I'm going to do some trimming. Once again, I'm going to say, let's get rid of all those, and that. I'll get rid of this as well. That gives me a little pilaster here. I want the same thing on the other side. I'm going to mirror that right around the middle of this. Comes over here, trim. I'm going to trim that out. Now I've got those little bump outs, and I still want them to all be one piece. So I'm now going to use the join command. And the join command, I'm going to put it all the way around here, join them all together, and you'll notice now I have individual closed elements for everything that I just did. So far, so good. And I would stop here at this point, by the way, and I'd ask you individually, does that make sense? Does that make sense? I also, when we do the class, I'm going to do this a little more slowly. Again, I'm trying to give you a sense of how you're going to be dealing with and what you're going to see when I do this kind of work. We'll leave the footings under the lally columns out. But now what I want to do is I want to put in those hidden lines representing the footings. And here's where the offset command is also really, really powerful. I'm going to change to the footing layer. And I'm going to use offset. And I'm going to say offset layer current. My offset distance is going to be 4. And I'm going to pick that right there and offset it up here. Pick this, offset it in here. Pick this, offset it in here. Now you notice that those lines came in blue. If I turn on line weights, the object lines are thick and those lines are thin. The one thing they aren't right now is hidden. Well, the reason they aren't hidden is because right now the scale is set to 1:1. There's a variable called MSLT scale that will allow your line types to match the current plot scale. But I haven't changed that plot scale. What I need to know, if I go to a layout, is what scale is going to work. Now you notice when I get to the layout, you can see the hidden lines. I double click in here and say, well, let's just try, well, let's see if 1/4 inch equals a foot is going to work on that sheet of paper. A little too big, but that's what it would look like at 1/4 inch equals a foot. If I wanted to put it on this sheet of paper, I might go with 1/8 inch equals a foot. You'll notice if I go back to model space, and once I know this plot scale I want to use, I change that to 1/8 inch equals a foot, and then I do a regen. Now I can see all the lines representing that footing. I'm going to put a couple dimensions in here now, which means I need to have a layer for dimensions. So I'm going to go back up to the layer command. And I'm going to add another layer. And that layer is going to be called structural, FNDN, DIMS for dimensions. I'll make the dimensions magenta, and I'll make the line type continuous, but I'm going to leave that set the way it is. We'll make that the current line type. Get out of our layer command. And now as I start putting in my dimensions, because I've already set an annotative scale, when I do a linear dimension and say I need to have a dimension that goes from here to here, I bring this down here, it's automatically scaled up so that it looks right. Now, and actually, that's not where I would have started. Let's still start here, go to here. That's my first dimension. We'll put it down there. Now I can use the dimension continuous option. And if I use dimension continuous, you notice those weird fractions. This is where having that set the way it is so helpful, because if I get exact numbers, I know that I drew this thing exactly. Okay, I'm going to stop this for now. This is not meant to replace what we're going to do when classes start. It's just meant to give you a sense or a flavor. At this point, I'd go, all right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then I would say, Anne, did you understand what I just did? And Anne's going to say, no, I didn't. Could you go back and show me something that I didn't get? You also, by the way, I'm hoping, will just unmute yourself if something comes up. If I do something that you can't see very well or it doesn't make sense, that you can stop me and ask a question, and I'd be happy to answer those questions. But I will query each one of you periodically and just make sure that what I did made sense. And that's where, if it doesn't, I expect you to say something. And all you have to do to say yes is either you say, yeah, it looks fine, do that, say something, or if you don't have your camera on, just go down to where these little reactors are. There's a button down here called reactions, and it allows you to do a thumbs up or clapping. I wish it allowed you to do a thumbs down. It doesn't. I'm actually looking into adding more reactions there because only 2 right now. So anyway, that's that. I'm looking forward to class a lot. I love teaching this class. People find this class to be a little challenging, but here's the thing. I just had somebody call me the other day for a reference for a student, and they said, what we love about your students is that they are familiar with the entire program, recognize the value of being efficient, draw accurately and with precision, and understand how important it is to have standards. And he said, I quote, standards start with templates. Now, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Let me know if there's any questions, and I'm really looking forward to having you in class. So I'm now going to end this right now.